centuries to consolidate. Independence sometimes resulted from peaceful negotiations, but the attainment of full sovereignty all too often required violent struggles. This process reached its peak in the early 1960s, followed by a second wave of decolonization in the Portuguese colonies in the mid-1970s. Following the Vietnamese communist victory over the United States, the Cold War was transformed by a series of strategic realignments and the radicalization of Third World revolutionary nationalism, both occasioned by the Sino-Soviet split. The dismantling of Europe's formal imperial system was not complete until the end of apartheid in South Africa in the early 1990s. Even then, hegemonic power structures remained in place across the Third World, ensuring ongoing indebtedness to and dependence on Western states, corporations, and institutions. Throughout this process, Cold War dynamics would frequently restrict the parameters of political, economic, and cultural transformation, dramatically increase the violence associated with decolonization, and forestalled the complete undoing of colonial-era power structures. With Europe's great empires in retreat, newly ascendant superpower rivals, the Soviet Union and the United States, launched a fierce competition to fill the gaping global power vacuums left in their wake. The decolonizing Third World, or what is now often referred to as the Global South, included key strategic sites and contained vast natural resources and mineral wealth that both superpowers deemed vital to their economic and military strength. Moreover, the political orientation of newly independent states seemed critical in the ideological battle between communism and liberal democratic capitalism, two totalizing and totally irreconcilable political and economic systems. In the zero-sum game of the Cold War, strategists in Washington and Moscow deemed any small victories for their adversaries to be significant threats to their own survival. Both superpowers therefore posited alternatives to the old imperial system, rooted in their overarching ideologies, aimed at winning allies in the Third World. Just as critically, they sought to keep newly liberated countries from falling into the enemy camp. Moscow called for a radical anti-capitalist, anti-colonial revolution. Washington, calling for democracy while too often aligning with authoritarian guardians of the status quo, pleaded for a more gradual, orderly transition to independence. Modernization and development programs constituted one of the key mechanisms by which the superpowers sought to make inroads into the Third World. Indeed, the question of modernization rested at the heart of post-World War II international history. As historian Todd Shepard has argued, in the early years of the Cold War, the Western powers came to see decolonization as an inevitable stage in a narrative of progress. It was no longer something to be resisted, but something to be controlled. Imperialists therefore replaced the old language of civilizing mission, long used to justify their empires, with talks of a modernizing mission. This modernizing mission, though rooted in long-standing civilizational precepts, emerged largely in reaction to a mid-1950s Soviet thrust to win over allies in the Third World by exporting its planned industrialization model, backed with Soviet aid and technical assistance. In turn, the Western powers cited the need for protracted tutelage in political, technological, economic, and even cultural modernization to carve out ongoing metropolitan influence in their former colonies. Asserting their unique abilities to provide such tutelage, the Cold War superpowers swept into the Third World with competing models of modernization and development, rooted in their diametrically opposed views of the history of the world and its proper trajectory. Their development aid programs were designed to fast-track backward societies from their purportedly primitive states to the supposed pinnacles of modernity that they each claimed to embody. Developments in the Third World would become no less than a litmus test of their core ideas about the nature and direction of historical change. To their great frustration, however,